Each year, the Iowa Department of Public Safety's Division of Criminal Investigation Crime Lab receives thousands of pieces of evidence submitted for analysis from local, county, state, and federal law enforcement agencies. Much of that evidence comes from complex, major crime scenes that can include anything from weapons and clothing to fingerprints and hair, all extremely crucial to each investigation. A newly created Wrongful Conviction Division with the Office of the State Public Defender, in cooperation with the DCI, is looking specifically at cases from the 80s and 90s.
We have been working closely with them in an attempt to identify individuals incarcerated in the state prison system where hair analysis, microscopic hair analysis, may have been performed on those cases. Typically involved in cases of sex abuse or possibly robberies where individuals wore masks to hide their faces. So there may be hairs in those masks, there may be hairs from sexual assault kits and rape cases or from bedding where sexual assaults took place.
Historically, criminalists would have to determine whether the evidence submitted was animal or human hair by microscopic examination. If it was determined to be human, further analysis would be done. For example,
we would get known hair samples from the suspect and known hair samples from the victim. So a good example would be a sex abuse case where we had pubic combings from the victim and we identified foreign pubic hairs in the victim's pubic combings. And what we would then do is get known pubic hair standards from the suspect, known pubic hair standards from the victim, and compare those standard hairs against the questioned hair that was found in the victim's pubic combings and determine whether or not we could make an association, a disassociation, or basically an inconclusive.
And if an association was made, the DCI criminalist had to determine the significance of the association as taught to the DCI criminalist by the FBI Crime Lab.
Our laboratory's policy was that we would say that a hair was similar to an individual and could have come from that individual. We would never, back in those days of microscopic hair examinations, ever say that it did in fact come from that individual, only that it was similar and could have. For me, that was the extent to which I would testify in court or write in a report.
Once the DCI identifies and gathers all known cases where hair examination was done, they turn those case files over to the Wrongful Conviction Division.
They will then be going back and looking at court transcripts and testimony to determine, in their opinion, or this unit will determine whether or not they believe that those hair examinations were or were not crucial in the conviction of that individual. If cases are identified where there may have been a situation where they believe someone may have been wrongfully convicted, DNA testing is still available to reanalyze samples in these cases if in fact that the evidence is still available.
Since 2000, the DCI Crime Lab no longer performs microscopic hair comparisons and has since relied heavily on DNA testing.
DNA testing is very accurate. SDR testing is very discriminating, very accurate. A much better methodology to use in microscopic hair comparison.
Today, Paul Bush is the only criminalist still working at the DCI Crime Lab that used microscopic hair comparison back in the 80s and 90s, and he's confident with the DCI's previous practices.
Let's say 20–25% of the cases there may be hairs submitted. Of those, again, probably a lesser percentage where the hairs were significant because we may have had other evidence in the case that was more significant, whether or not be serology, blood typing results, or say fingerprints. Our goal in forensic science in the state crime laboratory is to always find the truth and do the most accurate and complete testing that can be performed with the evidence that is submitted to us.